Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist congregation in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. And we are here on a nice snowy morning and grateful to be together. Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist. And I am the Reverend Julianne Lepp. It is great to be with you this Sunday morning. Today we are going to talk about thriving in difficult times, and this can be a little bit of a misnomer because to thrive in difficult times means that you're not always going to thrive in the same way that you might think about, right? Normally we think about, oh, we're doing all the things wonderful and everything's going great, but maybe just putting your pants on one leg at a time and getting up and doing the things that you need to do is thriving. So we'll talk more about that this morning. Welcome to you who come in need of healing, you who are confused or have been betrayed. Welcome with your problems and your pain. Welcome to your joys and your wonderings. Welcome for your need for hope and your need for assurance. Instead of answers here, may you find safety for your questions. Instead of promises, may you find community for your struggle. People with hands and hearts to join you in engaging with the challenges and changes of your day. And these are the words of the Reverend Maureen Killoran. Come, let us worship together.
That was absolutely beautiful. Hi, I'm Danny Higley, and I'm here to talk to you about a special announcement. Upcoming is the pledge kickoff. And the pledge is where you estimate how much your household can contribute to UUC from this coming July to the June after. And it helps to pay for wonderful things like RE staff, the building. I know we're not there right now, but it still exists. And so unsexy things like the heating bill. But, it's our spiritual home. And so I want to talk more about that because that's really where the world should be. Um, so I want to take you to my first day here, which was almost 9 years ago, almost exactly. There was a Wednesday dinner service for In Bulk. They were having spaghetti dinner. I can't believe I remember that, just so you know. My memory is not that good. And I remember my friend Amanda had invited me. She'd been talking about this church. It was open and welcoming, and even with my weird pagany beliefs, they would accept me. And she finally, I'm going to say convinced, she persisted. And so she invited me to the spaghetti dinner for an in bulk service, and I went. And I'm pretty sure we sang Rising Green, and I'm pretty sure that's why I love that song so much. But what was cool is I met the people who came, and then I decided to go to that Sunday service as well. And I will tell you, that is the warmest welcome I have ever felt anywhere. I walked in, the greeters, I know Karen had been there on Wednesday and she greeted me by name on Sunday when she saw me, as did Julie. And they welcomed me in, they took me to the welcome center, they did all these things. Um, I'm going to try not to cry. And I remember I walked into the sanctuary down from the welcoming table. I walked down on the right side, and I don't know if you guys remember where I sit, but it's in the very front on the right side. I was literally a couple rows behind where I now normally sit. And I sat down and waited like for with bated breath on how is this going to go. Um, and I remember Sarah Harder spoke the welcoming words, and I cried. I'm not that big of a crier, but the welcoming words spoke volumes to me of the people that were here. So there was this wonderful connection I had there. Later, Carl went up to the piano and started giving instructions for when the Spirit says do. And I was like, well, this is interesting. I've never experienced having to give like instructions for a song, but okay, let's go with it. And I remember that everybody was up and like dancing a little bit while they sang. And once I got into the song, I just put the hymnal down because Carl was yelling out the next word that was different, so it was fine. And I think we got to like the third verse, and Pam got up and started dancing, and I started crying because it was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. Not only that she felt comfortable enough to express her spirituality in such a manner, but people joined in, there was clapping. I had never experienced something like that. Such a celebration of a person's own spirituality. And so, like, I want you to kind of, if you can, hold that in your mind. If you've been there and maybe experienced some of it, it's probably easier. But I just want you to keep those kinds of feelings of home in your heart while you're contemplating your pledge. The cool thing about UU is there is a group or activity for absolutely everyone. There are chalice groups, there's choir, which I'm particularly partial to, travel groups, there's crafting and knitting, a men's group. You can simply come before or stay after service and have some wonderful conversation with people, or you can dive into a committee or one of those groups. And the pledges are how UUC plans next year's budget. And I know we're all hoping to get back home into the church as soon as we safely can.
Thank you, Danny. I'm Nate Otto. I am VP of the board this year. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation. We are a religious community who commit ourselves to diversity. We hope to nourish human differences, those of gender, race, age, ability, sexual orientation, and political views, culture, class, and religious belief, too. Welcome to all those who treasure freedom of conscience and the search for truth. We promise to do our best to provide you a spiritual home. We extend a special welcome to our visitors today. We hope you will follow our Facebook page. To participate in Zoom and receive announcements about special events in our religious exploration classes, please sign up for our weekly email. There should be a link in the comments section on our Facebook page where you can sign up. Also, families who follow our religious exploration Facebook page can get additional information. There are religious exploration classes for 4K through 9th grade and a youth group every Wednesday online for middle school and high school students. We're glad you could join us today.
Good morning. I'm Kurt Erickson, your worship associate this morning. And at this time, I invite you to light your chalice at home. And then with our opening or our chalice lighting words. During our darkest moments, still there is light. When facing our biggest challenges, still there is light. When all we can do is put one foot in front of the other, still there is light. When we can't see the way out, still there is light. When all we can do to help is hold someone's hand as they cry, still there is light. We are the light for ourselves and for one another. Always there is light. Our first reading today, The Courage of Patience by Reverend Richard Gilbert. When we are overwhelmed with the world and cannot see our way clear, when life seems a struggle between tedium and apathy, our frenzy and exhaustion, when today seems a punishment and tomorrow a torment, may we find the courage of patience. May we recognize courage in ourselves and our companions that is not dramatic, that elicits no fanfare, that commands little notice by the world, that is forgotten and taken for granted. May we learn how to cope like those who live one day of pain at a time, who see the long path of suffering and do not despair, who inspire us by their patient courage. When we are impatient and afraid, may we know such courage and quietly celebrate its presence among us.
Now is the time in our service where we share our deepest joys and concerns. If you have a joy or concern that you would like to share in this community, you can post it in the chat on Facebook or here in Zoom, and I will share it aloud. We also have time for those who are logged in on Zoom for after service. We have a time where people can share those more personal joys and concerns in their own voices. I would like to light a candle for Carol Johnson, who is, as we've announced, in hospice at this time. She has moved to Dove West, and I'll light this candle for her, and we'll be sharing that information soon, but she can't have any visitors at this time, but you'll be able to send cards to Dove West for her. And if you have any special messages, you can send them yourself, or if you would like them to be shared by a lay minister or myself, you can let me know too. We have a joy from David. Henry passed all of his classes, and Tim made the dean's list at Gustavus Davidson. That's a mouthful. I always have trouble saying that one. Also wanted to share a joy from Marcia Jacobs, and she's happy to have her granddaughter with her for a second time this week. She and I shared the sewing of a pillow. I have to remember I can light candles now. I have a candle for that joy. I'd also like to light a candle of concern for a family member of mine who is struggling. Jennifer Lee shares, this is from Sophia. We are both joyful for our new president. I'm concerned for my great aunt who had chest pain and turned out to have pneumonia. So we light a candle of both joy and concern. Randy Objects shares, someone close to my heart has COVID and they are at high risk. Prayers to Carol. She always made me feel heard and enjoyed conversation with her. From Elita Reese, let me go ahead and do Randy's candle here. I'm so out of practice with lighting candles. Normally at church we have our little candle lighting, and have to get back into that. From Alita Reese, Donna Kay, my niece, has COVID. Her mother Kay is much better. Thank you for all your thoughts. Please include Donna Kay. From Ralph, a joy that my snowblower started this morning, and yes, that's a good joy. And Ken Adler, who says congratulations to Kendra Lepp, who earned an E2 award in high school. Thanks, Ken. An E2 award is kind of a teacher nominates you for being a good egg or something like that. I want to share this final candle for all the joys and concerns too tender to escape the folds of our hearts. If you'll please join me in the words, love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Dark of winter, soft and still, your quiet calm surrounds me. Let my thoughts go where they will, ease my mind profoundly, and then my soul will sing a song, a blessed song of love eternal. Gentle darkness, soft and still, bring your quiet to me. Darkness, soothe my weary eyes, that I may see more clearly. When my heart with sorrow cries, comfort and caress me.
The next reading this morning is Poetry as a Sacrament, Disentangling from the Darkness by Parker Palmer. Years ago, a teacher told me, poetry is my religion. I didn't understand what she meant until I began reading Mary Oliver, whose poems often strike me as sacraments, outward and visible signs of an inward and invisible grace. Some mornings when I wake up, this morning was one of them, I find it hard to disentangle myself from the darkness. My analytic mind can usually tell me why. Today, it was a lingering illness, a vexing email I got last night, and events that weigh me down. Understanding the why helps me gain perspective. But that kind of knowledge does not free me from the night, free me to move into the day, to engage the world with trust and hope. So, this morning, as I always do, I turned to poetry, another kind of knowing, in search of grace, and found a dimly remembered Mary Oliver poem called Landscape. Taking in those images readied me for this truth. If the doors of my heart ever close, I am as good as dead. As long as I can feel the darkness as well as the light, those doors remain open. And with the poet, I can say, every morning, so far, I'm alive. I chalk that blessed fact up to a combination of dumb luck, the love of friends, the kindness of strangers, and the grace mediated by life's many sacraments, including poetry and the natural world. For this, I can only say, thank you. Poetry, said C.S. Lewis, is a little incarnation. When I read Mary Oliver, those little incarnations add up. They help me step full-bodied into the day with whatever light I possess to do whatever I can to illuminate the darkness.
Ever since the harvest auction, I have been ready to use this poets calendar. It's a little hard to see the title, but the title is Wisconsin Poets Calendar 2021, and I got the writing basket. I won it, and from that Jesse Peterson donated, and it had little journals, and it had the Wisconsin Poets Calendar. And what's nice is when you turn the page, you get a poem to look at, and I don't know about you, but having something to center myself around, especially words, there's a certain distilling that poetry offers us that takes life and runs it through kind of a coffee filter and gets to that blessed caffeine. Or I have to use the sacrament of coffee that you use, understand. But there is truly something about words. And as we heard with this morning's music from Julia and the Hirsches and the Kuttas, that touches us in a different way than just being in our minds will do. And so I posted on Facebook, how do we thrive in these times? And I was glad I got some pushback because, we're not going to necessarily thrive in these times. To be able to function is pretty good. And, I'm of a certain age, and you might see that I, sometimes have more sleepy looking eyes, and today I have that. I struggle with insomnia sometimes. And while it's gotten a little bit better since some recent political events, I'm still, I still struggle, at night, and I worry and think, and many of us have felt weighed down with things that are too much. We worry about COVID. We worry about the economy and so many things. I'm not going to sit here and tell you all the things we worry about. You've got that. What we're looking for is, what is it that will lift us up? What will hold us? And how will we find that light, that spark of hope. And I think I think of my plants. Okay, so I was a late gardener, and I have used many of your knowledge for this labyrinth garden that I've tried to plant this year. You're doing native plants and things like that. Um, and we have a certain amount of house plants that we can protect from the cats. So we got this plant light, and we have our plants safely on a three-tiered shelf above our fireplace. And if you put the light on a plant, it'll start growing towards the light, right? But it grows in weird patterns. It'll kind of do this thing if you don't flip it around, right? It'll get too big in one area because it's not natural. And right now, it's not natural. We're growing in strange ways and blooming in ways that we didn't anticipate. When I asked on Facebook, how are people thriving, Megan Fuccelli talked about homesteading and how that has presented a beautiful chance for her. She's been at home finding dry goods and things like that to cook more. And Julianne Emerson, talked about the fact that just, not necessarily thriving, but trying to find ways just to function during COVID. And I got answers about music and beauty and community. And I think for many of us, each day we wake up and we say, okay, let's do this. And some days we don't. So how can we find ways to thrive in difficult times? And I wanted to share, I was given this book, Wintering: The Power of Rest and Retreat in Difficult Times, by Catherine May. And I have not finished it yet. And that's okay, right? We have all these shoulds. I think I have a pile of books up to here beside my bedside table, and I get this little feeling of shame and guilt that I haven't finished them. And we don't want to do that. The thing about winter is the time to rest and retreat and to slow down. And I think the pandemic has been a long winter. We've had to be at home more. And I know Wisconsinites, we know how to do winter. We know how to do the higgy and the cozy. But sometimes we forget. And I wanted to share this little excerpt from this book. In the high summer, we want to be outside and active. In winter, we are called inside. And here we attend to all the detritus of summer months, when we are too busy to take the necessary care. Winter is when I reorganize my bookshelves and read all the books I acquired in the previous year and failed to actually read. And it is also the time that I reread beloved novels for the pleasure of reacquainting myself with old friends. In summer, I want big, splashy ideas and trashy page turners devoured while lounging in a garden chair or perching on the breakwaters of the beach. In winter, I want concepts to chew over in a pool of lamplight, slow and spiritual reading, a reinforcement for the soul. Winter is a time for libraries. Well, we get our libraries at pickup, right? The muffled quiet of book stacks and the scent of old pages and dust. In winter, I can spend hours in silent pursuit of a half-understood concept or detail of history. There is nowhere else to be. And for us extroverts, or for those of us that have relied on bookshops, libraries, all these comforts that are outside of our home, I think many of us have tried to recreate that. I know I've tried to learn to cook different things, and it seemed like everybody was making sourdough bread, right? Flour went out the window when the pandemic first happened, and we keep trying to create home, create that sense of joy and connection. In sometimes we look outside of ourselves for that, and that's fine. But I think we can also rest in who we are, rest in who we might be. And that's something that I have really appreciated about the pandemic, is that I've had more time with my thoughts and had more time to examine, who is this Julie person who's going to be turning 47 soon? Who is this mom of a senior, and who is this minister lady in the Midwest who grew up in South Carolina? And we all go through that time, right, where we figure out who we are, what we're doing. And I've talked to many people, and you've had more time with the people you're at home with, if you have people at home. And it can either make things worse, or it can make things better, or maybe bring things to light. And so thriving in difficult times is self-examination. And people like Brene Brown, if you haven't read her, run quick and do that. If you haven't listened to her, she's amazing. And it's letting go of the shoulds, letting go of the shame. And this whole society is caught up in what's your career, what college is your kid going to, what, performative. What is your outcome? And being a minister, my outcomes are really different than when I was a stockbroker. I used to be really obsessed with that. How are we serving customers? How many trades do we do? Are we treating our people right? And when you're in the business of relationships, it makes you think differently. And aren't we all in the business of relationships? Isn't that our way of being in the world? Little baby newborns require touch to survive. And I've talked to people who are lonely and are hungry for touch. And sometimes we can't provide that. And it was such, I did not expect to be able to visit someone's bedside recently. And I did not touch because it's COVID, but just to lay eyes on someone was a gift. And a lot of us have been denied that. Our rituals of grief, our hugs and our love. And how do we find that? And we've created these communities. We have members in Minnesota and Hawaii, and we've tried to reach across this distance. And I feel like sometimes like a Care Bear. I'm like, here's the power of my heart. Do you feel it? and then I look at you and I'm like, can you show me your Care Bear, your love? And it's it's not something we can always touch or feel, that's tangible, but it's there. It's kind of like, when you walk into a room and you can feel somebody looking at you. I hope that you can feel that tangible difference of a community that is reaching out to you and helping you feel that you are not alone. And whether you're a member or a friend or a stranger who happened to look at our Facebook page, that is what we need to be doing in this world, is letting people know that it's okay to not be thriving in these times, and that it's going to be different. And there's this group that I found. I was so excited. If you haven't heard of them, they're called Rising Appalachia. And it's these two sisters who grew up in the folk music tradition. And it's Rising Appalachia. And they have a song called Resilient. And I swear I've been playing that nonstop. And it goes, I am resilient. And I just do it over and over. I'm like, yeah, I'm resilient. I am. And somehow I start believing that. And that's okay. That's where poetry and beauty and music and belief and love, they give us different words in our head. They give us different words in our heart. That's why I don't believe all that BS that I grew up with about original sin and that I'm going to hell, that people who don't believe the right way are going to hell because it's BS. And it's harmful, and it creates pain and shame, and oh, I don't love the right kind of person. I'm not the right kind of expression of my gender. Well, that's BS. And I think it's important to hear that in sacred spaces, that that we're worthy and lovable, and that there's hope. And I know I'm throwing a lot in here, but to thrive in difficult times, we have to find that strong center. And for each of us, that's going to look different. And if you're measuring yourself by your neighbor or by your best friend or whoever, that doesn't work. So one of the things that is suggested by wellness experts is cultivating a strong body. Well, I don't like doing that. I don't like that, but I love it when I'm doing it, and so walking and doing yoga and all those beautiful things in the winter is harder for me because I just want to curl up. But when you develop a strong body or some sort of body practice, notice how your emotions are, how grounded your emotions can be, because you have an outlet. And I took martial arts, and punching that bag was really good for me. And so when during this past 4 years, I've tried to find ways to let some of that out in similar ways. Cultivating a strong spirit. The poet Rumi said, "Come out of the circle of time and into the circle of love." That's what building a strong spirit allows us to do. It gives us a perspective that's not bound to time or circumstance. Come out of the circle of time and come into the circle of love. It's being in that present moment and feeling that connection. And then there's cultivating a strong mind. And the psychiatrist in Auschwitz, no, I can't say it. Anyway, he's a survivor of the Holocaust, Viktor Frankl. In Man's Search for Meaning, he said, "The one thing you can't take away from me is the way I choose to respond to what you do to me. The last of one's freedom is to choose one's attitude in any given circumstance." And, there have been difficult times that humanity has moved through, and and finding that deep well of resilience is different for each of us. And so I want to close with this reading. And when I think of resilience, I like to think of little people. And, our littlest people have been through a lot, trying to understand why they can't be with friends, and, why they have to go to school, and why they're separated from the grandmas and the grandpas sometimes. And this is a reading by Barbara Rohde. "I wasn't flattered when one of my daughters confided that she thought of me as the big there when she was 3 years old. There. If I remember correctly, I was in the middle of a phase where I was hoping to reassure myself that I still had a fertile mind as well as a welcoming heart. Now, years later, I can admit that the role of the big there is a necessary part of parenthood, not to be disparaged. At times, even the most mature of us want someone to dry our eyes, encircle us with welcoming arms, and to offer us a cup of hot cocoa." And she goes on to talk about a friend, Ruth, who faked her way into a hospital room and did just that for her, to be present to her suffering. And, I think that's a great way to think about how we get through difficult times, is to find a big there. How can we be that to other people? How can we be that to ourselves in healthy ways? and just slowing down, being gentle with ourselves, and knowing that, as Stephanie Turner posted on my Facebook page, she said, I have to remember that this is one moment, but this is just a moment in time. And while this feels like a moment in time that has been very long, she's right. You know, it is a moment of time. And as Danny said, you know, I look forward to that moment where we can sing and dance and love up on each other in ways that we, you know, we can do. And I wish you peace. And I wish you to know that to thrive in difficult times is just like a plant. You're going to grow in different ways, and you're going to, but what will bloom afterwards, you know? What's going to be the gift among our challenges? Thank you. Amen. One of the things I appreciate about our congregation is that each Sunday we give half of all non-pledge donations that are designated for 50-50 Share the Plate to a community organization. And for January, it's the Bolton Refuge House. And we've had people in our own congregation benefit from the Bolton Refuge House. And it helps people who are trying to definitely have the big there and to go on with their lives. You can donate online at uueauclair.com and indicate how you would like to donate. You could also text to give at 84321. With gratitude for the abundance in our lives, we give to help people in need and to support the work of this congregation. Thank you so much.
Spirit of light, come unto me, sing in my heart, stirrings of compassion, blow in the wind, rise and flies in the sea.
Please join me at home in extinguishing your chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. For those of you watching from our Facebook live stream, I'm so glad you've joined us today. If you'd like to get information on how to join services in Zoom, you can fill out the visitor link in the Facebook comments. Those attending in Zoom, we will take a brief moment to share joys and concerns or share names that you might not have shared during the service, and then we will move into our breakout rooms. Our closing words are Our Connection by Reverend Kathy Huff. Our time in this place may have ended, but our connection to each other in this community remains. Together, may we walk the path of justice, speak words of love, live selfless deed, trod gently upon the earth, and fill the world with compassion. Until we meet again, blessed be.